This is exciting. Frankie Corrado is back with us. We're going through Canada's NHL teams one by one to talk about their needs ahead of the trade deadline. We're going to start in the West, and specifically we're going to start in Vancouver, a team that's already been busy, frankly, as you know. We've got JT Miller moving out. We've got Marcus Pettersson coming in. We've got Drew O'Connor coming in, among others. Overall, they really, at least temporarily, solved a dressing room problem. Sure. Do you think they're done?
No, they can't be done because there were high expectations with this group. And I think if you look offensively, I would like to see a little more creativity added. Like, they don't generate anything off the rush. And I get that maybe they're not trying to be a rush team. They dump the puck in a lot. They want to play off the cycle, want to generate some chances off the forecheck. But it's nice to have some players that are a little more offensively inclined. So, if you're Vancouver, you now have a situation where Miller's out, Philip Heedle's in. He's more he's not more creative than JT Miller, but he's a creative type player.
Right.
So if you can add someone like maybe Gus Nyquist, I think a lot of people are going to look to Nashville and say, okay, who can we pick apart from that team?
Yeah.
He's a UFA, makes just over $3 million. Ricard Raquel is another name that Jim Rutherford would be very familiar with from his time in Pittsburgh. And it's like, that's a versatile guy. You can put him at center. You can put him at the wing. He's having a really nice season, and he generates some chances in and around the front of the net. So, if I'm Vancouver, I think you've made your moves on D. You're probably looking at adding a little more offense, whether it's down the middle or at wing, but just someone who adds a little more creativity to your offensive group.
Seems like Raquel will be a pricey acquisition if someone's able to grab him. Calgary, like Vancouver, they made a significant move. They bring in Morgan Frost. They bring in Joel Farabee. First of all, what did you think of that move by Craig Conroy?
I thought that was really smart. That's exactly the type of move that they need to make, right? You go after guys that are in their mid-20s that might have a little more offense, that maybe for whatever reason, certain situation, it just hasn't worked out. But if you're truly retooling, those are the types of moves that you make.
Now, it's weird because they are retooling, maybe even rebuilding, but they're just 3 points back of a playoff spot.
It's been a great year for them.
It's been such a good year. Obviously, Dustin Wolf is a Calder candidate. He's been unbelievable. But it's a weird spot for Craig Conroy to be in. Obviously, you pick up Frost and Farabee, and that seems like a great move for now and in the future. But do you really want to give up assets to add guys when you're kind of still in somewhat of a rebuild?
Yeah, I don't necessarily think you give up assets for rentals at this point. You probably still make moves that keep your long-term vision in mind. And so, we've seen the Farabee-Frost thing. So is there other players that fit that mold? Dylan Cousins' name always seems to get thrown around, but that's a guy who it's like he's had a down year compared to 2 years ago. Could you bring him in? I also think scoring is important for the Calgary Flames. So is there someone around the league that you look at and say, I know he has scored in the past. He just hasn't necessarily done it here. Maybe Nick Robertson is one of those guys. Toronto's going to make moves. Are they going to have too many forwards? Are they going to have to dispose of one? Do you take a flyer on someone like that? There's just things that you look at the roster and say, hey, that could make sense. But for the Calgary Flames, I don't think you're looking at, UFA rental type players. You're looking at guys that are going to help keep you competitive for, years down the road here, and hopefully guys that have a little more upside, and they find that upside with you.
The Edmonton Oilers, so intriguing. First in the Pacific. They've already added John Klingberg. The D doesn't seem finished. And the other thing we should mention is Evander Kane could potentially come back.
Yeah.
So you got him on LTIR now, but if he returns, at this point, what would you say is Edmonton's biggest need?
On defense. We saw them bring in John Klingberg, and hey, if it works, that's great. But I still look at their top four and I say there's something missing there. Just a bigger, kind of reliable veteran guy. So, maybe Ian Cole, right? That's a guy who's won Stanley Cups, has been a minute guy, penalty kill guy, block shots type, a playoff type player on the back end. I think that could help them. And I don't know how high the acquisition cost would be on someone like that, but it's different than going after a Connor Murphy of Chicago, where that's going to cost you a ton. You might not have the assets, so there's your rental. Up front, like Nick Bjugstad was really good for the Oilers when he played there previously.
He was.
Right? Like big depth scoring, could kill some penalties for you. That's something that would be intriguing because it's familiar, you know it works, like the fit is there, and it's always nice to have that like big speed type player lower in your lineup. And we know speed is something that the Edmonton Oilers have wanted this year. Of course, they brought in Kasperi Kapanen earlier this year, and that's been a nice fit for them as well. But and I think for the Oilers, another like veteran, grizzled defenseman who can play a little bit of a gnarlier game, and Nick Bjugstad would be great because you know it works already.
Yeah, and he'd be comfortable there. He's familiar with the guys in the dressing room. Winnipeg has a 9-point lead on the rest of the Western Conference. It's crazy. They are on pace, Frankie, for potentially a top 10 season in NHL history. So you might say, well, maybe Winnipeg just can stand pat and do nothing. Do you see a way that Kevin Cheveldayoff could actually improve what's already been done here?
I think you look at it where you're at and say, let's go in here. Like, we have a chance to do something, and Connor Hellebuck's having an unbelievable season, and maybe this is the year where Hellebuck has it for the playoffs,
right,
where he steals you, not only a game, but he can steal you a series in the playoffs, right? So with that being said, I look at the Jets roster, and I think I want a little more presence on the second line. And what does that presence mean? I want someone who can score in and around the front of the net, who can skate, because you might have to play with Nick Ehlers, or you will have to play with Nick Ehlers. So you're going to have to keep up with him. Nemesnikov's a speedy player. So Brock Nelson of the New York Islanders. Like, that is a guy who is different than what they currently have slotted in that position. Big, strong, fast, can score goals. And this is a team that doesn't have any issues scoring goals, but you'd be adding more that way. And I think on the back end, you need one more defenseman. Right now, like, if you're looking at the third pair, it's some combination of Colin Miller, Logan Stanley, Ville Heinola. I would love to have like one more really experienced NHL guy that's been around, seen it. Just alleviates things for the top four a little bit. Maybe Ryan Suter. Like, I don't know.
Wow, that would be wild.
That would be interesting, wouldn't it? Like, I don't know. The St. Louis Blues, they're falling back.
Yeah.
That's a UFA that, it's an expiring contract. Not far from home for him.
Yeah.
That they would serve a purpose. Now, you never know, like, is the guy going to want to go? Can they make that trade? But, like, on the surface, if you look at the roster, like, that is a nice fit for what they would need on the back end. It just helps slot everyone a little bit better.
I forgot to mention earlier in our Four Nations chat that I think a lot of people have had a better chance to look at Josh Morrissey now that he's playing, and maybe have a bit more appreciation for how incredible a player he really is.
Well, exactly, right? Like, right up there with, the best defenseman in the NHL. It's not just numbers. That's, if you looked at the stat sheet and you said, oh, Josh Morrissey must be having a really good year. Like, yeah, he is, but you have to watch everything that he does, the subtleties in his game, the minutes that he plays, makes so many, things that are not easy look easy on a nightly basis for Winnipeg.